Awesome. Okay, I figured it out. Can you see my screen okay? Should say welcome.
Yes.
All right, awesome.
Looks good.
So just to give you a little background, we've been trying to, at the Center for Environmental Transformation, have more opportunities for folks to ask questions, interact with different facilities and different issues that folks are concerned with. And we've been having some of these community meetings, trying to reach out to as many folks as we can, just to really build transparency and some relationships between neighbors and neighboring facilities. So our hope is to really foster some great conversation, have some questions answered, and hear from residents primarily about their questions and concerns. I'll say it again in a couple minutes once a few more people join us, but being an overburdened community, as the DEP calls it, means that folks in Waterfront South get a lot of notices about permits, about proposed changes to facilities, and it can be quite overwhelming. So I know I mentioned that the document we were given in regards to your facility at Gypsum was like 800 pages. So we heard from a lot of folks, what does this mean? What does this mean for our community? What are we breathing? What's in the air? What are these changes? Is there going to be more pollution? Are there dangers associated with what they're proposing? So it's great to have you here and be able to just get that all out on the table and be able to talk about it directly with you. So it's fantastic.
Good. Yeah, I'm glad we've got the opportunity to do that too, because you know your 800-page document from NJDEP, some novels aren't that long, and I'm sure it's not exciting reading. So it's very confusing and can get confusing to us to even look at what they have. So hopefully we can break it down and make it somewhat easy to understand. I know when we get into the projects part of it, I'll probably explain a little, some of the nomenclature of what it is that we're looking at, and maybe it'll make more sense to people. So.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. So we could probably get started. I see a handful of folks on, and I'll keep admitting as they come in. So welcome everyone to our conversation with GP Gypsum. And just a brief agenda. We'll do some introductions from the folks from Gypsum so we know who's joining us tonight. Then we'll start with community questions because I believe that that's important to center and honor the community first. And just so you get an idea of what folks are looking to ask you and what their questions and concerns might be. And then Kevin, I'm not sure if you're going to give the same presentation. Sure. That you shared with me and our team at Columbia a few weeks ago, but that was really helpful. And I think that would be great for folks to be able to hear from you. And we'll end with our discussion there. That's all right.
I'm not 100% sure if I'm the one that was losing the signal, but you were kind of fading out there.
Yeah, there was a lot of reverb.
Okay. Yeah, digitized.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
That's all right. I think what I heard you say is you wanted to do just the questions first, the things that the community is concerned about. And then I do have that presentation because I think that gives kind of a good base understanding of what we do and what we're looking for with the permit applications that we have. So
awesome. Thank you.
And I think that'll answer some of the questions. I mean, I hope so.
Great. Sorry for my internet quality. Hopefully I won't be talking too much tonight, so it won't matter too much. But I like to start all of our meetings with a community agreement that we center the community first. So we give priority to residents who have questions or concerns. We share the air so that everyone can speak. We believe that we agree to believe each other's stories and experiences. We treat each other with kindness, and we ask that you ask permission before sharing anything personal that's shared in our meeting space. All right, given that, I just wanted to make a note before we start that there are 2 follow-up steps to tonight's meeting. The first is a DEP public hearing about this permit application, and that is on April 20th, so that's next week. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. And the public comment period where you can submit your questions and comments is also open until May 7th. All right, so I will stop sharing my screen. And if our friends from Gypsum want to introduce themselves, that would be great.
Sure, I'll start. My name's Kevin Coggins. I'm the facility manager at the GP Gypsum plant in Camden, New Jersey. I've been with the company for 26 years, very familiar with the type of business that we do and the processes that we go through, as well as the, any questions you may have about the types of products that we make and manufacture. So, Rick?
Yeah, I'm Rick Kimball. I do community and public affairs for Georgia Pacific out of the corporate office in Atlanta. And my job primarily is to make sure that our facilities are being citizens in the communities they serve. And so that's why I'm involved here. Scott?
Yeah. Hey, guys. I'm Scott Matchett. I am internal company environmental counsel, and I'm based here in Atlanta. But a fun fact that I mentioned on the last call is that I was actually born in Camden and Cooper Hospital there, and grew up in Camden County, and a lot of family still lives in Camden County. So I'm pretty familiar with the area.
Good, Ben?
Hi guys, Ben Chance. I'm the Camden Facility Environmental Manager, and I've been there about 2 years.
All right, and I see we have Ed on also.
Ed Hogan, are you on mute? Uh-oh.
We may have to come back to Ed.
Hey, Kevin, I can introduce myself real quick.
Oh, I didn't recognize it says iPhone, so I wasn't sure.
Oh, yeah, I'm calling from my car at my son's soccer practice. But my name's Justine Harrison. I wasn't on the last call, but I'm the Gypsum Environmental Manager. I live in Atlanta, and I've been in this role for about a year.
And Ed Hogan here. I finally learned how to use the machine here, and I'm outside counsel of the company out of Somerville, New Jersey.
All right.
All right, thank you all so much for joining us. Is that everybody?
Yeah, that's everybody that we've got to be presenting tonight.
Fantastic. Awesome. All right. So I want to get us started with opening it up to the community. So if there are folks on the call that just want to ask your questions, if you're curious about the facility, if you have specific questions about the permit, I know we heard from several folks, what does it mean? What are they doing in the neighborhood? So feel free to ask those questions now, please.
Yeah, hi, Kate. Let me see. Can you hear?
We can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we hear you.
I'm just wondering, is this just a promotion for the gypsum company, Kate? Is there anybody on the other side at this meeting? I thought it was going to be more discussion on the pros and cons, but I don't see that CFET has brought anybody in who gives the other side, or have you?
That's your job, Barbara.
You want me? You want us to do the 800 pages? You want us to read the 800 pages, right?
No. Not at all. And we do actually have some folks here from sorry, I should have said from the Columbia Environmental Law Clinic. So we have Alia. Is there anybody else on the call? Want to give us a wave?
Not yet. I think a few other folks might be joining a little bit later.
Awesome. So this team from Columbia has been working so hard to interpret the document, to bring in experts to try and figure out, what it means for us and to help us interpret it on the ground. And we're still doing that. And this process is ongoing. And that's why the Department of Environmental Protection is involved and why we're having the hearing. So this is certainly not just a commercial for anyone, but it's an opportunity for you to directly ask your questions, share your concerns, be as skeptical as you want, and ask whatever it is that's on your mind. And from here, we'll have the public comment period, we'll have the public hearing, and I'm happy to work with you on that as well.
So Barbara, too, just to tell you, I wish we could be face to face, sitting down and being able to have kind of a town hall type meeting. But we know that when we get to the public hearing, and we haven't been part of this before, but when we get to the public hearing, there's not a whole lot of question and answer. I think they're going to take questions and then they'll record questions and then respond to them later on. So this is just kind of a free dialogue exchange. We want to be transparent. We want to be able to show that we're environmental stewards and that we're doing things that we believe are right for the community, as well as being an economically viable employer for the area too. So.
Well, actually, if we look at the community needs, there should be absolutely no expansion of any businesses that pollute the air in Camden. That is what we need. So this is kind of a joke, the meeting with you 6 people from Gypsum. And thank you, Alia. I'm glad that you're here, but I think it's sort of unfair that you're the only person who really knows anything about the subject. I know that there are some people here who are with other organizations, like Ben Sirocco and Mike Morgan. I think those two know a lot about the subject, but expecting the people in the community who don't know anything except that we've been dumped on for decades is unrealistic.
Well, hopefully when we get to the presentation, I want to be able to show you some of the numbers and some of the things that we've done to change that. And hopefully that'll help paint a different picture, at least for Georgia Pacific Gypsum anyway. I can't speak to surrounding surrounding businesses, but I do feel like you'll at least have a little light shed on what our permit process is asking for. We're looking at net negatives and the potential to emit. And you'll be able to see that when we look at the presentation.
And my hope too, Barbara, is that this is a chance for us to hear and then know what we want to ask questions about. Because now we do have the public hearing process and we do have the public comment period as well. So this is a good chance for us to gather information so that we feel empowered to ask better questions when it comes time for the hearing and for the public comment period. And so I will be happy to sit down with you and chat more about the document and what folks from the Columbia Law School have found out as well. But I didn't want to pass up the opportunity to give you a chance to sit down directly with folks and ask your questions, gather more information, and continue the work outside of this meeting, of course.
Well, I think you almost have to be a full-time person in some kind of environmental circumstance to be able to defend the neighborhood. So, Kate, I respect what you're trying to do, but I don't really think we have a leader, and that's not your fault or CFET's fault. It's just that it's such a huge issue. We need someone full-time to work on it. And I don't know that EPA has really defended us.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, this is by no means the end. This is just a piece of it, just a piece of the puzzle. But I'd love to see if Cheryl maybe wanted to speak. You had some really pointed questions and some really great insights.
Sure. Was it helpful if I list my questions, or should I just go one at a time?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah, let's just go one at a time.
Yeah, one at a time will work.
Okay. So I know on the proposal, it says that there are several pieces of equipment that are being taken offline. So first question is, how recently were any of these pieces operating?
So we're still permitted right now for a Title V permit, which is a major contributor potential to emit. Now, that being said, the equipment that we have finally made the decision on that we will not restart has been out of commission or has not been used, has not been started back up for the past 10 years. So we've seen a decrease, and again, you'll see that in the presentation. It kind of shows what our recent trend has been. But we have finally there's been that, not sure about making a decision on whether we start back up in this, what it is, the wallboard manufacturing. And we've made the business decision to not do that so that we can actually demonstrate that we're a minor contributor for the area.
So the wallboard stopped about 10 years ago, and those machinery is going to be formally removed, but it hasn't been in operation for the last 10 years.
That's right. We have not started back up in 10 years.
So is Gypsum making wallboard in other locations?
They are.
So one of the things that I noticed there's an increase is U14, which was the third item. And I saw that you are proposing to triple the throughput, but it has a 30-fold increase in particulate emissions. I'm wondering.
U14 is, what's the title on that? What is that one?
That's our land plaster. That's our land plaster loading spout, Kevin.
Land plaster loading spout, okay. And Ben, do you want to talk to the U14 then?
Yeah, sure. So, Sherry, your question was specifically about the potentials that looked like they were tripling.
Well, it looked like the throughput is tripling, but along with that, it's a 30-fold increase in emissions. So wondering what the justification is for the disproportionate increase in particulates.
Yeah, so those are potential emissions of particulates from our land plaster loading spout. The reality is that we're not going to emit up to that level because we just don't have the business to justify it or the amount of trucks or anything like that. What we will see is approximately a 10 or 20% increase versus last year's hours of operation.
Yeah, and that's potentially. So that's just a very conservative, hey, if business is the best that we could expect it to possibly be, we would see no greater than a 20% increase in hours. So we were capped previously at 1,000 hours of operation, which put us in, hey, we may come in November or December, we may run up against those hours and have to shut the customer off because we won't go past our permit limits. We would have to shut the customer down. So that's what that is. It's just an extension of the potential hours so that we could, if we needed to fill orders for a customer, we could do that.
Right. That still doesn't answer the question about why, even in theory, why the potential to increase throughput by 300% would cause a 3,000% increase in particulates. Is that a typo? Is that accurate? Like do you understand like the disproportionate? Like you would expect a 300% increase would be a 300% increase in particulates. So why is it a tenfold?
A 3,000% increase in particulate.
Yes.
Okay. Ben,
I mean, which is 30-fold.
Yeah, I don't know those numbers off the top of my head. I mean, I agree that
I didn't read the 800. It's on like the like 2-page summary.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I can look at that specific example. But to put some actual numbers around this, Cheryl, we did approximately 900 hours of business last year on that specific spout, and our best or our most conservative estimate is a 20% increase, and that's going to be about 1,100 hours. So like we talked about, at most of maybe a 20% increase, but not a 3,000% increase.
So yeah, so we were previously permitted at 1,000, and we didn't want to have to not fill an order for our customer. So when we put in the potential to emit, the state asked for, hey, what is the greatest potential that you could operate? So when we submit the permit, it has to say the greatest potential is that we can load every hour. It's not feasible because we can't produce that much, we can't ship that much, we can't even process that much. But the state is asking for, what is the equipment capable of?
So again, yeah, I guess. Sure, that makes sense for why you are asking to be able to triple throughput. It just doesn't explain the 10-fold increase in potential to emit particulates. So if you need to look at the data, I understand, but future clarification.
Hey, Ben, let's just check the numbers on DEP's website. I mean, because that
summary wasn't prepared by us, was it?
I don't think so.
I think that was the DEP synthesis of our application.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's safe to say there's no proposal, and it won't happen in reality that particulate emissions are going to increase by 3,000%. I think that's, if the DEP summary says that, it must be a typo or something.
And then I guess next question is just a concern about fugitive dust with the loading and unloading processes, which, any increase in volume will increase those potentials to emit that aren't regulated. So wondering what safeguards you have in place or plan to mitigate fugitive emissions.
So we do continuously look for best practices. I mean, we're complying with the state regulation, but within our group, we look for environmental best practices. So we investigate different ways of controlling either dust from rock, or we don't allow the rock to be dropped from a height. We cover our belt lines and make sure that so as we get better at best practices, as we improve our equipment, part of it is when we do improve our equipment, we have to ask for permitting to be able to improve the equipment. Some of that is, might be aged equipment. We're asking for more reliable equipment to be able to do what we need to do as well. So we do have a constant, and I know Justine, like she said, is on the phone, and Ben, they're looking at best practices all the time on how we can do that.
Something that I think would be helpful from the community standpoint is to know if those policies are in writing, and then what is the accountability measures that you have internally for making sure that there's a difference between the best practices in theory and then what actually happens operations on the ground.
Yeah, we do have best practices that we implement on writing and in the program. We've purchased a street sweeper to be able to continuously keep dust swept up off the ground and collected and then dumped appropriately. We have multiple readouts. We have requirements for, like I said, height of rock, and then any further ones that we have for dust control.
Yeah, I mean, to answer Cheryl's question about accountability, we have a fugitive dust management plan that's built right into our Title V permit, and we do monthly inspections to make. I personally do those each month to make sure that we are meeting each one of those dust management practices. We get inspected every year. Not only for the air side of things, but also for stormwater also. And for us, like, let's use an example like sweeping that Kevin was talking about. We perform sweeping every day. The reason we do that is because of dust, because of we don't want trucks to kick up dust and impact air pollution, but we also don't want particulates. We also don't want gypsum to be on our streets and cause stormwater pollution, right? So it's kind of a twofold thing. So we get inspected for both of those environmental programs.
Okay. And then another question about U14 is what the frequency is for the stack test for that unit, the land plaster loading.
So there's no regular stack testing done on that. We will perform stack testing within 180 days after this permit is approved. But it's a small source, so NJDP has not deemed that it's necessary to, say, do annual testing on a source like that. If it was a much larger source or something, then we might do annual testing or once every 5 years. That's what I meant by periodic testing, but we only have to do kind of one-off testing just to confirm that what we're seeing in practice is what we put into the permit. And obviously, if it's not, then we can't run it. Then we have to reevaluate.
So when was the last time this unit was tested?
I don't know the answer to that one, Cheryl. I believe it was over 10 years ago.
Okay.
If ever. I mean, the environmental regulations have changed, so it's possible that it was installed and we didn't have to test it back then, but we will as a result of this permit application, along with source U31 and U36.
And then I'm almost finished with my questions. With number 4, which was the Steco cooling, saw that it's upgrading an older unit to an equivalent newer unit, but I would assume that when you're upgrading technologies that would come with a decreased potential to emit. I'm wondering why that isn't the case.
Yeah, so this one I understand your question, and it's hard to kind of get across. When we did the permitting, it included an emissions factor that we could not replicate. So at the time that it was permitted, we likely got the emissions factor from the original manufacturer, but we just didn't have that. So we instead are using an emissions factor that we do know the source of, and then obviously we're going to be testing that to confirm that that's an accurate emission factor to use. So it's a common practice, and again, we're going to be doing testing to confirm that that's the case. I know that that's a hard concept that I didn't totally understand early in my career. Do you need me to explain any more of that?
So I guess one question is, is there alternative Steco cooling technology that would have a verified potential to emit that would be lower than what is currently posed?
Is there? Yeah, I understand your question. There is not. I mean, the bag house that we use is 99.9% efficient at removing dust, and that is what's called SOTA, or state-of-the-art technology in the state of New Jersey.
Yeah, it is the industry's best practice for bag houses for dust removal.
So it is a controlled source. Yeah, that's important to understand.
All right, that is all I have for now.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Cheryl. I wanted to just see if, Ben, you had any questions. I know you have another air quality meeting in a half an hour, so I wanted to see if you wanted to jump in.
Hi, sure. So I think like at the beginning of this meeting, I heard some of the GP Gypsum folks introduce themselves and their titles, and several said it had the word environment in the title. So that makes me think, and I think I've heard you say, a few people say a couple times that you're, want to be environmental stewards and do the right thing with regards to the environment. So I'm curious if there's any reason why this has to happen now when, one of the most historic environmental justice laws in the history of the country was passed in the state of New Jersey, which would hold you to potentially higher restrictions, more community benefits. If you really care about the environment and the local community so much, won't you just put this off until that law is fully implemented?
Well, and when we look at the presentation, when we get to the presentation, you'll see that we started this permit application back in early 2019. So we've been trying to get, as a matter of fact, we have this equipment, in some places purchased, we just can't install until we have permits, and it's to improve the reliability and our efficiency in what we do. It's not something that we tried to get in ahead of any rules or regulations. It's something that as we became aware we had these permits coming up, we grouped them together so that there wasn't sequential reviews, that we could look at them at one time. And that all started back early 2019. We grouped them together September of 2019. Is that right, Ben?
Yeah, September of 2019. So that was about 12 months before Governor Murphy signed the bill. So yeah. It's coincidental that we're talking all about it at the same time right now. But this is something we did to respond to a customer desire for to change our facility, not as a result of any impending legislation.
Yeah, and Kevin, I don't know if you want to elaborate on that, maybe, Kevin. I mean, some or all of these projects, to my understanding, are being done to kind of satisfy customer requests, and the customers are kind of saying to us, I think that, hey, to keep our business, we'd like you to do things a certain way, and so we're trying to respond and satisfy those customers so they don't go elsewhere. So it's to maintain the business in Camden.
Right. And it's an ever-changing market, right? So we have to make sure that as the customer finds opportunities and can solidify what we have as a business in Camden, then we have to be able to move and flow with that as well. And these permits are because there's business there that will help stabilize us as a provider for jobs and economic stability in the area as well. And again, as we go through that, we vet very heavily the environmental consequence of those things. And Ben's constantly, we do walk-arounds on a regular basis. We constantly having operators do readings from stacks. So that's what those permits are for, and that's when they started. It's definitely not, it's just something that's taken us longer than we expected to take to get the permits approved.
Just one follow-up question. I'm curious, do you pay property taxes in Camden for your facility, or are you exempt because it's on South Jersey Port property?
Oh, wow. I don't know the answer to that question. Scott, do you have any idea?
Don't look at me, Kevin, because I don't know the answer either.
I promise you I can get the answer for you and follow back up.
I think that's the best we can do. I mean, you're talking to environmental folks here. I'm certainly not going to know the answer to that one.
Our controllers would probably know the answer to that.
Okay, last comment. I'm not sure if you're aware, but that NJDEP has like 12 to 14 air monitoring sites throughout the state that monitor a variety of pollution. The one on Spruce Street, which is very close to your facility, only a couple blocks away. I don't know if you know this, but it has the highest average particulate matter readings annually for several years out of the entire state of New Jersey. And the state of New Jersey has some of the worst air pollution in the country. So how do you feel about this? What impact do you think that you can have to help lower those numbers? And will this plan help lower the particulate matter in one of the most overburdened areas in the entire country for particulate matter?
I would say that no, I wasn't aware that it was the highest in the state of New Jersey. I do know that we've looked at the readings from Spruce Street as well, and realized that the pollution that it shows monitors has gone down over the years, but I hadn't compared it to others. But I do think that we, like I said, it's a changing environment, and as we change equipment, we have the potential to stabilize business. But what we're adding in this permit, these 9 permit applications that we have, it's a small, very small portion of actual emissions that we believe we'll see. So it's a small percentage.
Thank you.
Mike Morgan, you've had some great questions in the chat box. Did you want to share any of them?
Sure. I guess I can go in reverse. I think you mentioned your bag house was state of the art for New Jersey. So question was, are bag houses in general for your type of facility the best state of the art solution, or are there more modern methods? For example, I know with the incinerator, bag houses are, they're talking about putting a bag house at the incinerator, but it's also kind of not the most modern form of technology at this point, and I forget what the newer version is called. So for your type of facility, are bag houses, the best case scenario, or is there more sophisticated methods out there?
So I'll give you a different kind too. There's also electrostatic precipitators, and electrostatic precipitators are they're troublesome. I've dealt with those before. They're not as reliable as a bag house, and a bag house is, as long as we do our regular maintenance, which we do, and we make sure that we maintain differential pressures and we change bags out anytime we have indications that we may be changing differential pressures. It's a very reliable, and it is the most commonly used dust control method for the businesses of our type that create dust.
Yeah, if I could respond, sorry to jump in. If I could respond to Mike, were you talking about the trash incinerator that's down 676?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for those guys, a bag house would probably not be ideal because you're dealing with a lot more emissions than just particulates. In our case, we do not have combustion emissions from the source that we're talking about, and so bag houses do represent the best control. And furthermore, we replace bags regularly. And so we are constantly using the most up-to-date technology for bags. Bag houses themselves are relatively non-technological things. I mean, there's just boxes, and then you, through a pressure differential, you just suck the air from one end to the other. So as long as the filter media is brand new, then you'll be getting that 99.9% for removal efficiency. But for something like an incinerator, when you're dealing with toxics and that sort of thing, I agree with you. A bag house would not be the most modern form of control that trash incinerator would put in.
Yeah, thanks. So you mentioned hang on, sorry, let me go back to my notes. The electrostatic precipitator is not as reliable as a baghouse. What's the difference in, I guess, performance or filtering out particulate matter between the two?
Actually, you're better off using the filtration system that the socks provide in a baghouse, because what you rely on an electrostatic precipitator is a positive charge just to pull dust out of the air. And you have different mechanical pieces of equipment that have to tap and knock on, and ceramic insulators that fail. So you have shorts in electrostatic precipitators that just don't, it's not very efficient.
And it also requires a lot of energy, right, Kevin?
It does, yeah.
You build a big box and power it up. I mean, it's a big draw on energy usage.
Yeah, if you can imagine, you're just making a constant high static electricity charge to pull dust out of the air.
I'm just curious which one does a better job at filtering out particulate matter.
Yeah, most definitely the baghouse dust collectors.
Do you anticipate any increased truck traffic to the facility?
If we have increased truck traffic, that's what Ben was talking about. The potential would be, hey, we may have 20% increase in business, which would increase truck traffic slightly, but not much.
Then I guess my last question was, it was just that, thanks for coming out and meeting with us. In the spirit of our newly formed relationship, would you be willing to provide a tour at your facility for neighbors or members of Camden Collaborative Initiative? I'm a co-chair of the air quality group for CCI. And so I think that would be, that's kind of something that's been on my mind for all the different industries in the neighborhood, is to kind of get a tour and kind of learn more about you. And if you're interested in learning more about us, we would love to give you a tour and walk around our neighborhood down here too. Even though you're industrial to we're residential, we're still neighbors in the same place. So it would be, it'd be good to kind of start that relationship.
Yeah, I've been down around your area there a couple times, and I have to look and see what we can do for a tour. We're regulated somewhat by security, but we definitely could look into it and get back with you and find out what we can do.
Sounds good. And I also echo Ben's question about property taxes. I would be interested in that as well.
Okay.
Thank you, Mike. I also see in the chat that Barbara's asking a question about the section of your company that was shut down for 10 years. I think that was the wallboard production, is what you were saying?
Yes. Yeah, so back in 2008, when the housing crisis hit, we had to make several decisions on facilities. And in 2011, 2010, late 2010, we made a decision at Camden to idle the facility, not permanently disable it, but idle the facility. Now that idling has been under, hey, we've tried to make decisions based on business and rebounds of housing markets, and it's been kept in that idled stage for the past 10 years. And we've now made the decision, especially based on the type of equipment and the type of business we want to pursue, along with the equipment that we have that creates pollutants. We wanted to make sure we shut that down and pulled that out of the facility. So again, our plan is to not keep the Title V regulatory air permit, but to become a minor source provider by making sure that we're producing the right amount of equipment or right amount of materials and regulating ourselves to that.
So just to be clear, that part of the facility is shut down and it's not coming back online.
We have taken most of it out.
Correct.
So it's been disassembled, pulled out, and as a matter of fact, as of last week, we pulled more of the dryer and kiln area out. So we keep disassembling it.
I think the concern was that there was going to be an expansion of your facility. Can you explain it kind of simply for us what the change is?
You mean with the permits that we're talking about?
Yeah.
Sure. So one of the permits that you might see, like the bulk bag permit, we have, and I don't know if you want to go through the presentation, I'll show you when we get there. But the bulk bag permit, basically what it does, it gives us the ability, right now what we do is we pack industrial plasters. So we take gypsum, hydrous calcium sulfate that's used for soil conditioning, and we add heat to it to drive off the water that is chemically combined in there. So it makes plaster, and anybody who's done hand molds and things like that knows what plaster is. But we mix it with some minor materials to make it pourable for subfloors, and we pack it into 80-pound bags. That's the primary source of our business. And the 80-pound bags go on a pallet. We ship them via truck to different people who are making multifamily housing, and they pour it in the multifamily floor levels just so that they can sound dead in the floors, so you don't hear all the pitter patter and stuff going on up around you. What this is, the bulk bag system, is instead of an 80-pound bag, it gives us the ability to put 3,000 pounds of material into a poly bag, which can be recycled, and creates less waste for the end user as well. But it can't be ran in parallel to the bagging operation. So we shut off the 80-pound bag, and then we just divert our mixing operation over to the bulk bag system. So we're basically, it's a trade-off. We're deciding at that point for that business that we don't run 80-pound bags, we run 3,000-pound bags. There's another permit application in there that is for bulk poly silo. It's a polymer silo. So we have a poly extrusion line which makes a sound deadening layer that goes between this underlayment and the floor of a multifamily house. Currently, what we do is we bring totes of polymer pellets in, run them through the extruder, we melt it, we make an entangled mesh that goes on a fabric, and then we put it, it's just a subfloor is what it is. That permit is to give us the ability to bring a bulk truck in and fill the bin with a bulk truck. So we cut out the cardboard waste and the fork truck traffic that it takes to move around the totes. That permit, I know when Ben had to put that permit into the state, it says, what's the potential to emit? And the potential for that bin to emit is that it would take one bulk truck right after another bulk truck. As soon as one's done unloading, we would take another one, take another one, take another one. And you could get, I mean, the potential is like 20 trucks a day. In reality, we don't even have the ability. The best we could do may be 4 trucks a week. But that's far different when you look at the potential to emit that we have to turn into the state than 20 trucks a day. So that's the expansion part of what you're seeing. The rest of it is mainly like for like. And then we have some hours adjustment on the operating of our loading spout that we don't want to cut a customer off. And then we have some bulk loading spouts that we want to put in that are just more reliable, better bulk loading spouts. They don't increase production or create more expansion.
You can go ahead and feel free to share that presentation. I think it should work.
Okay. Let's see here. Share screen.
Hopefully.
While Kevin's doing that, I just want to answer Barbara's question that she put in the chat. She said, oh, I just lost the chat because the screen got shared. Well, I think it's what percentage of the facility was shut down. So we ran the numbers from a particulate matter frame, and it's about 70% of our particulates are legally allowable particulates from our permit will be removed as a result of permanently removing equipment. So, and to answer the expansion, we're not doing anything that breaks ground, increases the footprint of our building, anything like that.
That's a great point.
We're not, nothing's going to be outdoors. We're not adding new control devices or anything like that. We are merely incrementally changing our business.
Okay, yeah, that's a great point. And when you asked about expansion, the only thing that I was talking about was the addition of a couple pieces of equipment within the current building footprint that we have. That's what we're talking about. Okay, can you see my screen okay? All right, so real quick, just to show you, this is where we're sitting right here. I don't know if you can see my mouse. Does it work on this too? Okay, so our rock pile back here, we get delivered rock in from the Delaware, and we pile rock in this area right back here. Now, we keep all of our rock handling equipment in this area as well. So we don't use that equipment in other parts of the facility, and we don't drive it around, so we're taking it anywhere else. We maintain control in this area. As you can see here, this is not even part of the permit because it's not air quality, but we do have about 300 kilowatts of solar power, and we have a project to add another 750 kilowatts of solar power as well to help us absorb some of the dependency on the electrical system. So, any questions on the footprint? I will tell you real quick, this long section right here, to Barbara's question, this long section right here and this area right here is primarily where the board plant was. And you have to have about 500 foot of belt line to make board set the way it needs to set, and then it transfers into a kiln. Some of this is warehouse space, but we're taking all that out. Okay. This is just an overview of the facility. We employ about 50 employees, and this is the second bullet point here is talking about in 2010, we shifted away from the wallboard business, and we focus more on commodity and specialty gypsum products now, and I'll explain what some of that is. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with gypsum and the properties of gypsum, like I said, it's hydrous calcium sulfate. It's a rock that comes from the ground, and we put it back in the ground, as you can see on point 1 there, as land plaster. It's used for soil conditioning. It neutralizes soil, and it adds calcium and sulfates into the ground again for it promotes plant growth. So one of our largest businesses is being able to ship raw gypsum to agricultural and allow them to mix it into the ground. The stucco is, again, it's 100% calcined gypsum. When we say calcined gypsum, that means gypsum that has been heated. And so gypsum has 21% water, 20.9% water theoretically. And we heat about 3/4 of that water off. As on a cool day, you'll see what looks like smoke coming from our stacks. It's not smoke, it's steam, it's water vapor, because we're releasing about 2 tons of water per batch of cooked stucco out of those stacks. So we send that off in bulk trucks. Those are generally used for fireproofing. They spray on fireproofing applications. It's again, it's hydrous calcium sulfate, so it absorbs heat very well. The third thing there, you see finished plasters. We do blend some of our gypsum with cement and some smaller additives just to make set times last longer or to make it level out. And the largest part of our bagged industrial business is subfloorings. And like I said, we ship a lot of material to multifamily housings and hotels to be able to sound deaden between floors. And that's the primary driver for the business need that we have for different bag changes, for the bulk bag changes. In conjunction with that, number 4, we actually support that underlayment industry with extruded polypropylene mat. And it's just an entangled weave mat that allows airspace between the subfloor and the actual floor. So it creates more sound deadening for multifamily housing. Any questions on that? And I went through that really quick, and I have 26 years of doing this. I may skip over something, so if you have questions, please ask. Okay. All right, so this is the facility air emissions, and this is really just the past 3 years, how our trend has looked. So total suspended particulates, you can see that has gone down from 2017, 2018, 2019. PM10, you can see the readouts there. This is all available on the DEP website. And we don't have 2020 in because it's not fully vetted out, calculated yet. We want to make sure that all of our calculations are right. They showed a slight increase, but still well within the averages for the last 3 years. It's nothing that was surprising to us. Our business was really good during 2020. So during the COVID times and everybody realized they could work from home, people wanted to do home improvements. And that was something that we didn't expect to have happen, but we did see our business was much better in 2020. But we didn't show a significant increase in particulate emissions. Questions from here? Okay.
Just
So
curious,
this,
real quick, if you know why was 2017 higher than the other 2 years? Was there a change in operations or in volume?
so we've talked about that, and we believe that probably had to do with rock shipments and business at that time, that we saw more particulates during that time. And Ben, I don't know if you have any other comments on that.
I don't. Sorry, I wasn't at Camden in 2017.
Yeah. So what we've seen though is that our controls and our best practices are doing their work, and we're doing better at making sure we don't have, we had a street sweeper now. Like I said, we're keeping all of our roads clean as we do daily business. We're cleaning it back up. We're making sure that we don't have those particulate emissions. Okay, any other questions?
And
Okay.
one thing I'll point out there is that total suspended PM, which is sometimes abbreviated TSP, that is including those other two. So for example, let's just look at 2019, that 6.94 of particulate matter that's less than 10 microns is included in that 14.7. So it's not additive. It's just kind of breaking it out and being more specific about the
Yeah, I think
size.
some of the concern came from PM10, PM2.5. So we carved it out to show what it was. All right, this is just an illustration because, like I said, right now we're Title V major source permitted. We have the potential to emit at a much higher level than what we do emit. So I think the question earlier was, how long have we been since we ran the equipment? This is our 3 years average for total suspended particulate is about 19 tons a year. Somebody who has a Title V major source facility, they could emit 300 tons a year. So we're a fraction of what some of our dust manufacturers are. So the proposed projects, this is that timeline. Someone was asking earlier about the timeline and trying to make sure we understood when the New Jersey legislature passed or the bill was signed into place. And you can see here, we started making the permit applications back in 2009 with a minor application, had some subsequent significant applications, decided that we didn't want to see them run in sequence and put them all together so they could all be reviewed at one time. And late third quarter, fourth quarter of 2019. And you can see down at the bottom here, NJDEP asked a bunch of questions, wanted to clarify, wanted to make sure that they understood how we were describing things. And then right at the end here, we got the New Jersey bill passed, and they gave us the pre-draft permit on September of 2020. So that's where we started the public comment time, and where we're at now. A little more detail, this is the different permits. So we have the minor modification and the significant modifications that we combined. And these are the 9 projects that we've talked about some here: the bulk bagger, the loading spout, the operating hours on the loading spout, the pellet silo. And then you can see there's some here: removal of the wallboard, line dryer, and vacuum. That's an emissions decrease. We're actually showing a net potential emissions decrease. And the replacement of the bulk stucco loading spout, there's no emissions change there. That's just trying to get better reliable equipment so that we can have better controls. Replacement of what's called a Chemutech bulk stucco screener. It just screens out paper and pieces off of stucco that we're recycling. And it's a no emissions increase. Configuration of number 2 kettle. This one right here, a great question came out of this, was kettle number 2 flue arrangement. Might not make any sense to somebody who's not familiar with kettles. The flues that we call flues are just, if you can imagine, we're cooking, we take 17 tons of rock and we cook that rock, we heat that rock to drive off the moisture. When we do that, we do it in a large kettle. So if you were cooking on the stove, it's a large kettle, but to make sure that we're using the heat efficiently, we have tubes that go through the middle of that kettle to pass heat through. And those are called flues. So all this is saying, hey, we want to change the arrangement of the flues. So we have no emissions increase, but we want to make sure that we permit that activity. Did I confuse anybody with that? Okay. And then clean air plenum replacements, there's mill number 2 and kettle number 3. The kettle number 3 is actually the bag house area. So again, those are no emissions increases there as well. So if you look there, that this bullet point down here that says the 9 projects in this combined project application result in allowable TSP decrease, basically. And it's what we're doing is we're saying, hey, the total suspended particles is going to be down 2.2 tons. The PM10 would be a net decrease of 2.3 tons, and the PM 2.5 would be a net decrease of 4.6 tons. And that's the potential to emit based on removing more equipment. Any questions on that? Okay, and then this basically shows the same graph again with the Title V major source, the 3-year average total suspended particles, and then this shows what our estimated actual total suspended particles emissions we see as being an increase over what we were doing. So 0.01 to 1 ton per year is what we're looking at. It's a very, very small amount for total suspended. So
Renee, I think this answers some of the questions that you've put in the chat. You had said, explain how dust production wouldn't be increased. So you can see here kind of the magnitude of the increases that we're talking about. So that was a critical reason why we wanted to have kind of a back and forth discussion like this, is because what you would see in the on NJDEP's website is only potential emissions or worst case scenario or legally allowable emissions. And that doesn't tell exactly the full story.
Right.
So we've estimated here, and I've kind of made this bar. I sized it in a way to indicate kind of the perspective, the relative magnitudes of what we're looking at here.
Right. So the important thing here too is this may be what looks like 300% increase in emissions is really not, because that's the potential to emit. The estimated actual total suspended particles is a small portion. We're already at only 19% of what we're our potential to emit at a Title V major sources, and we're keeping that sliver very small on what we're trying to do to maintain business as well. Does that answer any questions, or does that generate any questions?
It feels like a little bit of comparing different things here. So we see this tall bar of the potential on paper, the potential to emit with the Title V permit, and that what you're actually doing, the 3-year average, is far below that because you idled and are now removing the wallboard operation.
So that is true. We're making sure that we're showing that we don't want to even have on paper that we have the potential to emit a large amount. Okay, so that is part of the permit, but our actuals, we did have, we talked about back here. This is what we're really seeing, right?
And what would the bar look like for the new potential to emit? Is it about 50% of the Title V? Is it about 75%? Where would that bar fit in on this graph?
Ben?
The bar for what we would expect our actuals to be next year?
No, the potential to emit, because the first bar is the potential to emit with Title V. What is the potential to emit with the new proposal?
The new potential is, I don't know. We didn't look at that number. That is definitely something that would be on NJDEP's application, though. It's I can get that for you by the end of the call. Sorry, we didn't show that. I mean, we're trying to provide, there's the potentials versus actuals kind of question, right? So
hopefully we're not
ground this
confused. Hopefully we're not confusing things more here, but I think we've already said that our legally allowable emissions, which is usually equated with PTE. I mean, PTE is limited by what you're legally allowed to emit. And I think we've already said that our legally allowable emissions are decreasing.
Yes, but what affects us in the community, and I'm a teacher here in South Camden. I have students who live just a couple blocks from your facility who have asthma. So what I'm looking at is what is going to change in the actual air that we're breathing between what things are now and what things would be with this permit. So we are looking at a slight increase in actual emissions over what things are currently. And the other thing that we have to think about is you're telling us that the actual increase will be, just a fraction of what the permitted potential to emit is. You're only going to be doing 4 trucks a week, not 20 a day. Yes. You're only going to be doing a 10 to 20% increase, not a threefold, 300% increase. However, you are telling us this with your words, but what the paper that you are bound to says is that you could, if you chose to, increase production by many magnitudes. And so for us as a community, while I want to trust that you all have good intentions, as a national, international company, even if each of you on this call want to do what's best for this community, a company is driven also by its bottom line and the financial interests. And so what's on paper, we have to care about that. Your words assuring us that that's worst case scenario, it'll never be that much, we can't take that at face value. We have to have we have to see what's on, say what is on paper is what could happen in our community. So if that makes sense for where we're coming from.
I think that's fair. The biggest problem is that we know what we're capable of doing, and NJDEP wants to see what the equipment is capable of doing, not whether we can actually produce it or not. It's just, hey, will that bin hold a load after load after load after load? Sure it will, but we can't do that. It's not feasible that we could do it. So that's why we're trying to make sure when you see that estimated actual, that's the real thing. That's what we're really looking at. There is the estimated actuals. These are, and again, I know when we get into 800 pages of documents and it gets confusing and everything, that's why we're trying to have the dialogue here, is what we can actually do. So, any other questions or thoughts there? Okay, and this is just a diagram of the bulk bagger system that we were talking about. We have a packing line that does 80-pound bags, and what it is, this would be sitting next to the line that does 80-pound bags, and it would do 3,000-pound bags. Our product formulas don't change. Our throughput through the packing operation doesn't change. It gives us a different bag size, is what it is. And it creates, in the end, it reduces the amount of waste that we put into each one of the job sites as well. So landfill materials go down, potential to recycle polymer bags goes up. So, and the last bullet point there just says it's a response to customers' ever-changing needs for their applicators, and we're trying to make sure we satisfy those needs. And it's actually, we've lost some steam with the customer because of the delay, and we're hoping to try and catch this before we lose the business as well. Okay, so this is just the community impacts of future projects. We do, as we said before, we've removed our diesel fuel firing capability and some we moved that equipment already. We've taken it out, and that's what helped us reduce the current allowable potential to emits. We do, though, want to continue with the permit application, not want to continue. We are continuing right now. We're actually underway with working on becoming a minor area emissions source, because some of this being Title V, being a major contributor, it for one, it puts us in a category that we look like we are a significant polluter for the environment when we're really not producing what we have that potential to produce. So that's why it's important to us to be able to talk to the community and let them know, hey, we're using gypsum, and the gypsum base is a natural base. What we're making is, we're not making toxic fumes and things like that are going into the air. We're using best practices and better equipment to control fugitive dusts. And we want to become a minor source provider in the area and continue being an economic, to be able to economically stimulate the area and be environmentally responsible while we're doing it. So I think that's the last slide that I've got. So I don't know if I generated more questions or helped answer any questions. But Kate, the floor is yours, I guess.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you sharing all of that detailed information with us. And for folks that couldn't be here tonight, we have it recorded. And I think being able to walk through the different parts of the permit application will be really helpful, especially as folks start to draft their public comment and their maybe their statements for the hearing next week. My intention for this meeting, that hopefully folks were able to gain from this, was this is kind of unheard of, that we get to have conversations like this. And as Ben mentioned, the new EJ bill is going to require meaningful participation with the community when it comes to these types of permit applications. And this is an opportunity for us to come to the same table and to talk about our shared environment. And for folks who live this day in and day out and breathe the air and worry about asthma and are dealing with the cumulative impacts of pollution, this is really important, just to be heard and to have questions to be answered from folks. So I really appreciate that. It really is not common. And I appreciate your time and your energy in putting together this presentation. Thankful for everyone who shared a question and a concern and a comment. I want to make sure if there's any further comments or questions, maybe we have time for one more if anybody wants to. I see Marcus, you have your hand up.
Yes, I'm here. I apologize for that. I just got from another meeting. Sorry about that. Thank you so much. This is Marcus Sibley, the New Jersey State Conference NAACP Environmental and Climate Justice Chairman. I just tuned in. I've been following this, and I just wanted to say, this is great. Thank you, CFET. Thank you for putting this together. It's important for us to have these conversations. But the main thing I just want to get across is conversations are pointless unless we take heed to what's being said. I hope that the powers that be are listening to the community. We've had too many examples of people going to the next step and the next step and saying, "Oh, we met with the community," but none of the feedback was taken into account. I hope people really understanding how important it is when we do sit down face to face. This isn't something you check off in the box. This is important that you hear what the community is saying, because the community is very close to their breaking point. It is too many things going on. And I understand the efforts that are being made, but when people know that there's generational asthma from living in the town, people know that multiple women in their family have had problems with pregnancies, and we know that there's a link to pollution, when we know the school to prison pipeline is exploding, and we know the connections to cognitive impairments. When we know these things now, and when people are bringing more things that pollute, we really need people to understand how serious this is and how close we are to a legitimate breaking point. So I missed some of the presentation, and I'm so glad it's being recorded, Kate. I look forward to looking at this later on, but I just want to get that across. Please don't give us lip service. We've had enough lip service. We need action. Our children deserve healthy air, healthy water, healthy soil. Our children deserve an opportunity to thrive. So I just hope that we take these times when we spend in each other's evening together, that we're actually taking account of what's being said. So again, thank you to everyone involved, and the NAACP will continue to monitor the situation. Thank you.
Marcus, if I could too, I do appreciate the comments. I'm glad that people are speaking up and making sure that we're getting some dialogue going here. And I do think that hopefully this is what it takes, some people coming to be transparent about what we do. I don't want to get rolled up into a facility that is a abuser of the environment. I want to make sure that we're sharing with you what we do, and we're doing what we can to sustain the economy as well at the same time. So I think that's important. I've seen a lot of businesses that don't do so well when it comes to asking for environmental, not just protection, but environmental perfection. Sometimes we're looking for the best way we can do it. So I appreciate the comments, and hopefully we're stepping forward the right direction here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Marcus. I could not have said it better. Any final questions, thoughts? All right. Thank you again so much, everyone, for joining us tonight. I think this was really helpful, hopefully in answering some of your questions and concerns. And digging into this topic a little bit more. CFED is going to continue to monitor what's going on. We're going to be ready for the public hearing next week if you want to chat about that or about the public comment period as well. And we look forward to continuing these conversations and our relationship together in the community so that we can make sure that environmental justice is a reality. So thank you all so very much. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.